This past week, my husband Mike and my son William went to a bar mitzvah. William's good friend Aiden has arrived at the Jewish age of discernment. He crossed that threshold toward adulthood to become a son of the commandment, as bar mitzvah literally means, as he celebrated with his family and friends and community. It was wonderful for William to experience that transition in another religion, and it was great for him to be there to support his friend. In our UCC tradition, we have something similar called confirmation, in which our young people learn and discern their own faith and beliefs. There's something about that age as a developmental milestone when children begin in earnest the transformation to being adults, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. It is a time filled with passion, feeling, and sometimes awkwardness and confusion and even cruelty. Most people have some pretty strong memories about the years age 12 to 14 in their own lives, and we really hold on to those middle school memories. The story that we read today in Luke 2 about Jesus as a 12-year-old boy is wonderful because of how stereotypically teenagery it is, even 2,000 years ago in the writing. The writer of Luke takes us back to that feeling and that time in our own lives with his writing. He unfolds the story in a way that we can all recognize. A tween who thinks they know more than their parents, who disobeys their parents, who is practicing engaging outside their family of origin, and who is wrestling with issues of religion and faith. We remember all those things about that age of our own lives, and we notice them in the children that we know. And those of us who are parents know the challenges of this age very well. And we hope that as they grow and as they expand and they move through this transition in their lives, they will remember that they are rooted in love. One thing we may not recognize in this story are the parts of the Jewish tradition. This story is set when Jesus was at that same age of discernment, the time of bar mitzvah, when he would become a member of the commandment, a son of the commandment. We don't know exactly what the requirements would have been back then for him to become a Jewish adult, but it seems clear that it was something similar to today's bar mitzvah. And the writer of Luke likely includes this story in his narrative to make sure that we know that Jesus has gone through this rite of passage, that he is a legit Jew, and he followed the right processes. Only teens who had gone through that process would have been allowed in the temple for the Passover celebration. So this story describes what would have been Jesus' first time being allowed in the holy space and in the holy festival celebration. So he might have traveled before, made the pilgrimage to Jerusalem on past Passovers, but he would have needed to wait outside. And this was his chance to go inside the sanctuary, and connect with the holiness in there. His presence there indicates his choice to have gone through the bar mitzvah, and it represents all of his work that he would have had to do to get there. Jesus had made a choice to become a son of the commandment, a son of God's covenants, and to enter that holy space of the temple. So that's what we are thinking about today, about our choices and about our holy spaces. So first, the choice. The choice of what we believe. How do we discern what we believe? How do we know it? How do we claim it? That's really what Jesus was doing. He was claiming it as a young person. And he was claiming it in a particular place in the temple and in a particular tradition, Judaism. That's what bar mitzvah or confirmation or other rites of passage represent, a choice. In that emotional, confused teenager time, he made a choice to find God in a particular way. How does Luke try to show us that choice and bring us along? It's brilliant writing that unfolds the story mostly from Jesus' parents' perspective, which I appreciate. Noticing that Jesus has disappeared and has gone out on his own. Through the eyes of his parents, we see that first, and then we see through the eyes of the people in the temple being amazed at what he's saying. We can see the choices that Jesus is making, even though it is from onlookers' perspectives, and we can see the impact that he was already starting to have. Another way that Luke conveys the choice and the place in this story is with his language, with his vocabulary, his chosen words. One commentator, Wes Avram, writes that this story is really alive with the language, and we are swept up with words like unaware and amazed and astonished and anxious and searching, and of course, Mary treasuring all these things in her heart. Avram argues that this vivid descriptive storytelling draws us in and conveys to us a sense of wonder. It is the wonder of youth, but it is also the wonder of faith, the magic when youth chooses faith. I often hear adults saying that they miss the passion and the feeling of their faith when they were younger. They miss that wonder. They miss that openness and sense of choice. And I understand that more and more as I get older, as it gets harder. We experience the losses of life, and it gets harder to feel as easily the presence of God. And we long for that presence. And in this pandemic, we have aged a lot in that way. The pandemic has made it harder for us to feel that fire and that excitement and that emotion of the youth choosing faith. And that's why it is so important, one reason at least, that intergenerational religious community is vital. Bar mitzvahs are not only for the teenagers that go through them, but they are for the whole community to feel the wonder of that choice again. And since most of us are past the age of 13, we may wonder if this story is only about thinking back on our own lives. But I don't think so. I think this story reminds us of the wonder that we can still feel and that we can still choose. Wes Avram wrote about this story. Jesus' presence in the temple calls us out to an openness to wonder and to a willingness to be surprised, an intensification of feeling, and the patience that sometimes we have to hold, and that we have to hold that experience for a little while until we might understand more than we do now. So we have to be open to that wonder. We can choose then, if we are open, where we can go look for it. Jesus chose to go to the temple that day, and even more so, he chose to stay in the temple. Even more, he chose to stay in that temple because his family had left and he stayed. And as he went through the rest of his relatively short life, Jesus made many choices that would lead him closer to God and to community. Sometimes those choices would be in holy places like the temple. And sometimes he sought the wonder of God out in the wilderness or among those excluded from the inner sanctuary. The pandemic has taken away a lot of our choices, especially about where we can go to be in the presence of God. to feel that complete awe. We can't sit in our own sanctuary and listen to the Voices of Hope choir sing. That's where I feel that wonder the most easily. We haven't been able to be in that sanctuary room all together for special holidays like Easter and Christmas. It feels like our religious choices have been limited or taken away altogether. And people have responded differently to that reality. Some have been pleased to find the wonder of God out in nature or in unexpected virtual ways or in some totally unexpected place or time. And some have deeply missed the tradition of our sanctuary space and have been grieved or even angered at having their choice taken away. As we continue to move through the phases and twists and turns of this pandemic, it feels a little like we are coming of age again. We are back in pandemic middle school, everyone. And as individuals and as a community, we are stepping out. We are making more choices about where to go and what to believe. How are we different now? Do we still believe that God is at work in the world even now? Do we believe that we can still find moments of wonder and awe and joy? Can we feel the specialness of a church sanctuary? Will we choose that again? Can we feel the specialness of God's presence? Can we seek it again? I hope we do. I hope we do. I hope we do choose it. Because no matter our choices or how many times we lose sight of the wonder, God is still choosing us. God is still working through me, through you, and through our teenagers at Hope UCC, through this special place and time, through our sanctuary room, through the whisper of the wind in the trees, and through the beauty of the stars in the sky. God is calling. God is choosing us. God is full of wonder, and thank goodness God is full of patience. God holds on to us and helps us grow. God keeps us rooted in love. And so may we find those roots again. May we too be full of wonder. May we seek the joy of God in community. May we be willing to be surprised. May we be patient with ourselves and with each other in between the wonderful moments. And may the God who makes every space holy find us and connect us again and again. Amen.